Memory is a liar. Or maybe not a liar, but it's a terrible editor, you know?
Yeah, it's a good way to put it.
If I ask you to think about your childhood, right now, you don't get a documentary. You don't get this perfect linear story.
No, not at all. It's more like Swiss cheese.
Exactly. It's Swiss cheese. You get these huge blank spaces, the holes, where, I don't know, months or even years just seem to vanish.
But then right next to those voids, you get the cheese.
Yes, the solid stuff. And it's so vivid. It's the smell of your grandmother's house, the sound of a specific cartoon.
Mm-hmm. Or the texture of a car seat on a hot day.
Mm-hmm.
Just these tiny, hyper-real details.
And that fragmented nature, that weird mix of void and intense reality is exactly where we're living today. We're looking at how memory works when the brain is, well, under siege. This is the Deep Dive, and today we are unpacking a really powerful, really raw piece of storytelling. We're looking at a memoir titled Growing Up Too Fast, which was featured on the More Than Transgender Podcast.
And it's a first-person account of growing up in the 1970s. But we should be clear, this is not the Brady Bunch version of the 70s.
Far from it. This is a deep dive into a childhood defined by what you could call dual realities.
That's it. On the surface, you got all the normal stuff, road trips, cartoons, Sunday school.
Pizza.
Right, eating pizza.
Uh-huh.
But underneath all that, there's severe family fracture, there's exposure to heavy-duty pharmaceuticals, and a pattern of sexual abuse that forces the narrator to basically be an adult in a child's body.
So our mission today is to really understand that. How does a kid find any sense of normal when their world is just imploding? We want to look at the survival mechanism.
Well, how does the brain protect itself when the adults can't or won't?
Exactly.
And, just a quick tone check before we get into it.
Yeah.
We are going to be discussing abuse, family dysfunction.
Yeah.
It's heavy stuff.
It is.
But the goal here isn't just to focus on tragedy. It's about insight. It's about understanding the narrator's perspective and the resilience it took to just get through it all.
So let's start at the beginning. The narrator takes us back to the early days in Chicago, before the move. And the description of the house, chaotic, doesn't even begin to cover it.
It's a pressure cooker. That's the feeling you get right away. The father is working these crazy hours, just constantly gone, trying to keep things afloat financially.
And all the stress is just palpable.
But it's the mother's situation that really signals how far off the rails things were.
Yeah, this detail really got me. The narrator says their mother needed to rest a lot, but they don't use a vague term like sleeping pills. They name the drug.
Thorazine.
Thorazine. And for anyone listening who might not know, that's not like taking a Tylenol PM.
No. Thorazine is a major tranquilizer. It's one of the first true antipsychotic medications. Back in the day, some people called it a chemical lobotomy because of how heavily it sedated patients.
Wow.
It was used for schizophrenia, severe manic episodes, serious psychiatric conditions.
And the narrator says it so plainly. I had no business knowing what Thorazine was.
And that right there, that's the key. A kid's vocabulary should be things like, Bugs Bunny or Snickers. When a child knows the name of a heavy-duty antipsychotic, it tells you the innocence was lost long before any single event.
The crisis was already the wallpaper. It sets the stage that the adults are compromised. And sadly, as chaotic as that house was, it seems like the walk home from school was even worse.
This is where the story shifts from, just dysfunctional to deeply traumatic. The narrator describes walking home with a classmate. A totally normal afternoon.
But then there's a detour.
Into an apartment garage.
Yeah.
And the way it's described is so just heartbreakingly matter-of-fact. The narrator says they were drastically underage, and in this garage, they were introduced to oral sex.
I want to pause on the memory here. Because we talked about the Swiss cheese thing. The narrator doesn't give us a big emotional speech. They give us a smell.
Motor oil and urine.
It's so visceral. It just makes your skin crawl.
But that's the hallmark of how trauma gets encoded. When something happens that's too overwhelming, the part of your brain that tells a story, the hippocampus, it can get kind of glitchy.
Okay.
But the amygdala, the brain's alarm system, that records the sensory data in high definition. So the smell of motor oil and urine, that anchors the trauma in physical reality. It's not a bad dream, it's a smell.
And the narrator actually describes what was happening in their head. They say, I think I blocked out feeling any emotions because we just went on with our lives like nothing.
That's dissociation. It's a classic survival tool. If you let yourself actually feel the terror and the confusion in that moment, you might just shatter. So the brain detaches. You go numb.
We just go home and watch TV.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a survival superpower, but it comes at a huge cost down the line.
There's another layer here, too, that I think is so important. The narrator mentions that this classmate, they didn't just come up with this on their own.
Right. They had been taught.
So it's a chain.
It's the cycle of abuse playing out in real time between children. The classmate was a victim who learned this behavior from someone else and was now passing it on. It just shows you how this stuff ripples out when no one is watching.
So you have this secret life in Chicago, the Thorazine at home, the garage after school, and then complete whiplash. The whole setting changes.
Yeah, the mother packs up the narrator and the brother. They leave the father behind after what the narrator just assumes were some huge arguments, and they drive to Ohio.
1970s Ohio. Now, no offense to Ohio, but coming from Chicago, that is a massive shift.
It's an enormous culture shock. That's the phrase the narrator uses.
Yeah.
You have to remember, Chicago in the 70s was a melting pot. The narrator was used to seeing people from all over the world.
Right. That was just normal.
And then they get to Ohio, and the world is suddenly binary. It's just black and white. The whole rich tapestry it vanishes. For a kid, that's so disorienting.
It wasn't just the people either. It was the pizza.
Oh, the pizza.
I love this detail.
Morning Chicago deep dish. And they called the Ohio pizza. Crackers with toppings.
Which is not an unfair description of some pizza, let's be honest. But it's not just about the food, is it? It's about comfort.
Absolutely. Food is home. And when the food changes, the people change, the dad is gone, you've lost your footing. The narrator also talks about losing access to those big institutions.
The Field Museum, the Shed Aquarium.
Places of wonder. They represent possibility. In Chicago, the world felt huge. In Ohio, it felt small and contained.
And there's one specific memory from Chicago that the narrator holds onto, which I think is just the poetic center of this whole story.
You're thinking of the theater.
Yeah, the Chicago theater. Seeing Sandy Duncan play Peter Pan.
Flying through the air.
Mm-hmm.
Just think about the irony there. Peter Pan is the boy who refuses to grow up. He lives in Neverland, so he never has to deal with adult problems.
And here's our narrator watching this character fly while they are being dragged down into a reality that's forcing them to grow up way, way too fast.
It's a crushing parallel.
It's almost like a taunt. I'm watching a boy who won't grow up while my own childhood is being stolen from me.
Yeah. So the family settles into this new, smaller life in Ohio. 5th grade, new school. You'd hope that maybe this is a fresh start.
You would hope the garage was left behind in Chicago, but the pattern follows them.
Trauma has a way of doing that. Or maybe vulnerability does. The narrator gets to this new school, and the teasing starts almost immediately.
The girly label.
Right. Why are you so girly?
And we know that social isolation like that, it's like blood in the water for predators.
It really is.
Yeah.
When a kid is pushed to the margins, they become desperate for connection, for any kind of validation, even if that validation comes in a really twisted form.
Which seems to be exactly what happened. Enter the second perpetrator, an older boy.
Yeah. He's been held back a year or two. He's bigger, stronger. The power dynamic is completely off from the very beginning. The narrator describes themselves as just tiny.
But they don't describe him as a bully at first. The language they use is so confused, almost romanticized.
It's so painful to read. The narrator says, I remember feeling like I was his girlfriend. It was their first kiss.
He's my boyfriend.
The narrator didn't have the word predation. They didn't have grooming. The only frame of reference they had for intimacy was romance. So they tried to jam this abusive square peg into that round hole. They thought it was affection.
But the reality was so grim, the narrator lists the places where this abuse happened. And again, it's the setting. Underneath train tracks, a public park right off a freeway.
These liminal spaces again. The edge of the map. Places people pass through but don't really see.
But the narrator makes a point to say it wasn't actually that hidden.
And that's the shock of looking back as an adult. The narrator realizes, wait a minute, there were cars driving by. There were houses right there. We were in a public park.
Why didn't anyone stop?
It speaks to the invisibility of children, or maybe the willful blindness of adults. You see 2 kids under a bridge. Do you stop your car? Or do you just assume you're playing and keep going?
The abuse was hiding in plain sight.
It was. And the narrator specifies that the abuse was the same as in Chicago. Oral sex was the go-to. Not penetration, but a consistent, repeated pattern.
Which creates this secret life. And this is where we really get to the core of the narrator's resilience, because you have this dark, hidden life under the train tracks, and then you have the rest of the week.
The narrator uses a metaphor for this that I thought was just brilliant. They said monopoly set in.
It's perfect. Life becomes this board game with strict rules and repetitive loops.
Totally.
Walk us through that Monopoly board.
Monday through Friday, school. Early to bed, which the narrator hated, identifying as a night creature.
Hmm.
Saturday, Charhauser, Sunday. Church. Go to jail, do not pass go.
And inside that loop, despite everything that was happening under the bridge, the narrator says life felt kind of normal.
That's the compartmentalization again. Kids can hold two completely contradictory realities at once. I'm a victim under the bridge, and I am a kid watching cartoons. The routine, the Monopoly board, it protects them from the chaos.
Let's talk about the cartoons, or the TV shows. Gunsmoke, The Big Valley, Hee Haw.
All Westerns, and why Westerns? They have rules. They're good guys and bad guys. The sheriff comes and fixes everything. It's a moral clarity that was completely absent from the narrator's real life.
And watching Hee Haw with Grandpa?
Yeah.
That's a real connection. That's safety.
So it wasn't all darkness. It was a strange mix. But there was one square on that Monopoly board that the narrator absolutely hated.
Sunday.
Church.
And this wasn't just about sitting quietly in a pew. This was forced performance.
Oh, yeah. Singing in the children's choir, getting up and reciting speeches for Christmas and Easter.
And the narrator's takeaway from all that Baptist routine is just scathing. They say, I didn't learn much about God, but I sure did learn a lot of how to be a hypocrite.
Wow, that line hits hard.
It does.
Think about it. You're a child carrying this massive, dark secret about what happens under the train tracks. Then on Sunday, you're forced to stand up, smile, and sing about being pure and good. You know you're pretending.
And you look out at the adults, and you start to realize they're all probably pretending too.
Exactly. Oh, the lesson isn't faith. The lesson is performance. We all pretend. And that fits perfectly with the narrator feeling like a night creature. If the daylight world of the church is where all the lies happen, then the dark starts to feel like the only honest place.
Even if it's dangerous, it creates this deep sense of alienation. I don't belong in the light because the light is fake.
Right. And that brings us right back to the central theme of growing up too fast. It isn't just about the acts themselves. It's about being forced to manage that duality. A 10-year-old shouldn't have to maintain a public persona and a private trauma.
That's an adult's burden. It robs you of just being a kid. You're always managing, always hiding.
Always surviving. And the fact that they did survive, that they navigated the Thorazine, the move, the garage, the train tracks, the church choir, is a testament to an incredible resilience. But it's a tragic kind of resilience, the kind of strength you wish no kid ever had to build.
As we wrap up, there's one last image the narrator shared that I want to leave with you. They mentioned wanting to go back.
A visual documentary.
Yeah, to physically revisit these places. The apartment garage in Chicago, the train tracks in Ohio, that park by the freeway.
It's a fascinating impulse, isn't it? To go stand in the physical space where the ghost of your past self is still trapped.
And that leads to the question I want you to carry with you today. We all have the geography of our childhood etched into our minds, right? The corner store, the shortcut through the woods, a friend's basement.
But for some people, those places aren't just scenery, they're evidence.
Exactly. So ask yourself, how does the physical landscape of our past hold the truth of who we were? And if we go back to those places, those garages and train tracks, are we healing the wound? Or are we just haunting ourselves?
That is the question.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. Take care of yourselves.